Balls on Causeway.
What's happening? Happy Wednesday night to all of you. Thanks for joining me. As always, it is much appreciated. Let's talk some Celtics. We're going to be doing this live on Wednesday nights, 7 p.m. Eastern on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. And, of course, if it's a game on Wednesday night, we'll be doing a live post-game podcast following said game. The biggest news of the day, before we get into these thoughts about the Celtics looking to make a trade or two or three, let's talk about the news of the day. Kristaps Porzingis was back at practice, practicing 5-on-5. He is optimistic that he's going to return on Friday night against the New York Knicks, which, yes, is a big deal. If you've seen this team play without Kristaps, it's rather obvious that they are a different team without him out there. He just impacts this team significantly on both ends of the floor, whether it's his post play offensively, whether it is his versatility on the defensive end. He is a critical piece to this operation, and without KP, this team runs into some issues. So Kristaps believes he'll be back out there on Friday night, which would be fantastic news for the Celtics and Porzingis. All right, let's jump into this idea of the Celtics looking to deal. The Celtics will reportedly look to make a deal or deals by the trading deadline. This came from Shams Charania yesterday. Here's what he said on the Run It Back show, quote, "I expect the Celtics to be active in the trade market as we get closer to February to try to see if they can beef up their bench rotation." Again, that's Shams Charania, and as we know, he is the second best insider. It's him and Woj who report most of the NBA news out there. So Shams says he believes the Celtics are going to look to make some kind of trade by the deadline to help strengthen their bench rotation. And this makes all the sense in the world. This team is win now. It's win now. The Celtics have to win now. We've talked about this 2-year, this 3-year window, and the C's know that. The C's understand that this is a very, very short-term window that they're dealing with. They're not going to be able to keep Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum and Porzingis and Derek White and Drew Holiday. They're not going to be able to keep all of these guys. Because of all the rules with the new CBA, it's going to be incredibly difficult to extend this period of time for 2 or 3 years. So you're trying to win now. And whatever you can do by the trading deadline that helps you hypothetically win more games and helps you win in the postseason, then you do that. That is your responsibility. So this makes all the sense in the world that a win now team is looking around saying, yeah, we need more people. We need more help on this team. It's obvious. The 2-year window, you can't waste this season. With the 2-year, 3-year window, if you waste this season, now all of a sudden, you're looking at Jason Tatum's big-time contract extension coming up. You're looking at Drew Holiday, who wants a contract extension. You get into Kristaps' 2-year extension that he signed when he was traded to Boston, and you get into all of the big Jaylen Brown contract numbers. So you can't afford to waste this season, not at the level that the Celtics are at right now. You have the best top 6 talent-wise in the NBA. If you waste this season, then that is irresponsible management from top to bottom. So they can't do that. You can't waste this season. And they have the assets to deal. That's the good news. Kevin O'Connor from The Ringer, he posted this after the Drew Holiday deal. The Celtics can still trade 2 future firsts in 3 swaps. They also have 8 second-round picks. So Kevin O'Connor posted that right after the Drew Holiday trade, which tells you O'Connor, he kind of knew that this day was going to come. He knew that as we got closer to the trading deadline, as we got into mid-late December, that the Celtics, if they needed any help, they would have the assets to trade to get that help. 2 future firsts, 3 future pick swaps, and 8 second-round picks. Brian Robb, my friend B-Rob at Mass Live, wrote, they as in the Celtics, have an open roster spot available along with a Grant Williams TPE, the trade exception, worth $6.2 million. So they have the assets. They have picks to trade. They have the traded player exception worth up to $6.2 million to deal. They have that open roster spot, which makes it much easier numbers-wise to move people out and bring people in. So they have all of the aspects of a deal together to put on the table. It's just whether or not they could finish the job. They have the assets to do it. Now, we'll talk about Brad Stevens in a minute, but don't forget, if you're watching, give us that like, thumbs up on YouTube if you're on YouTube. If you're on Twitter, give us the like as well. And of course, you can always comment, throw your comments in there, as Jamie did at the beginning of this program tonight. Man, not White. I find it hard to believe that Derek White, as long as the Celtics are willing to pay what White's looking for, I find it very difficult to believe that Derek White will not be a Celtic beyond the next 2 or 3 years. I think when you watch him play, we all see what he brings. He almost always makes the right play. And I don't think he's going to cost you 30, 35 million, right? That's also the difference. If you're looking at Drew Holiday versus Derek White, I would imagine, and I know everything that the Celtics said about Drew Holiday when they traded for him. I understand that Brad Stevens has wanted Holiday for years. But if Holiday is looking for 35 million a year, and it's the decision between Holiday and White, and Holiday's at 35 million and White's at 25 million, I'm taking Derek White. So I find it hard to believe that the Celtics would wave goodbye to Derek White. I don't see that happening. And I don't see any major pieces being traded from this roster for at least the next year or two. I don't see it. They understand the window. They want to make a run. They want to keep this six-man unit together, at least through Al Horford's contract, which it ends next season. So I think when you look at the nucleus of this team, I would not be concerned with anybody being traded by the trading deadline that has critical importance to this basketball team. I don't see that happening. I see this team trying to add to those pieces. Now let's get to Brad Stevens. We all know that Brad's aggressive. I mean, his track record is his track record. He is the anti-Chaim Bloom. Al Horford trade made it happen almost immediately. Made the trade for Derek White. Remember at the time when people were looking at that Derek White trade, and many people thought that the Celtics actually overpaid for Derek White? Do you remember that? I do. People thought that the Celtics went a little too bananas in trading for Derek White. And now a lot of people will look back at that trade and say, man, what a deal that was by Brad Stevens. Yes, the future pick, but we should always expect and anticipate this team to be talented and to win basketball games. So that pick should be in the 20s, fingers crossed. But he made the deal for Al Horford. He made the deal for Derek White. He made the deal for Malcolm Brogdon. He traded Marcus Smart this offseason. Then he double dipped and said, you know what? I'm going to trade another guard, Malcolm Brogdon. I'm going to get him out of here because he's not happy. He made the Drew Holiday trade, even though people thought the Celtics were done. It would not be able to entertain somebody like that on that kind of contract. Brad Stevens has proven one thing during his time here with the Celtics, that he is more than willing to pull the trigger on any deal that he thinks is going to help this basketball team. And so we know he's going to be aggressive. So he has the assets. This team is talented. And you have a very aggressive Brad Stevens. I would be surprised if the Celtics don't make a deal by the deadline. I might even be surprised if they don't make 2 deals by the deadline. That's how aggressive he is. Now, the question is, what do they need? Shams Charania says they want to help build this bench rotation. What do they need? Let's start with wing, right? Let's start with a bigger wing, somebody that's a little bit more athletic. Let's start with what they were trying to get from O'Shea Brissett, because Brissett's not playing any minutes. And I think it's because he can't shoot, and that would be a problem. So let's start there. Let's look at a physical, athletic wing, somebody who might be the upgrade over O'Shea Brissett, somebody who might be an upgrade over Lamar Stevens. So you start there. You also look at, I think, the biggest need, which is another big. You lost Grant Williams, and you really did not recover from that, right? I mean, you substituted Rob Williams with KP. You kept Al, and then you lost Grant. But you never found that other piece to replace Grant Williams. And I'm not the biggest Grant Williams fan. I mean, I think he's a good basketball player. Kind of annoyed me. He was like the Kevin Youkilis of the Celtics to me. For those people that remember Kevin Youkilis with the Red Sox, that was kind of like how annoyed I would be by Grant Williams with the talking to refs and all the other stuff. But he actually, if you look at this roster, he would have a role that's important for this team. And so I think the Celtics, they absolutely have to go out there and find somebody who can play the 4/5. Back in the day, 1 through 5 position, right? We all talk about positionless basketball now. The Celtics need to go out there and find somebody who could play that 4/5 position. Somebody who they can depend on that's not named Tatum, that's not named Horford, that's not named Porzingis. That's what they need to look at. They need to look at somebody who could possibly fill the role that Grant Williams was supposed to have last season before he fell out of favor with Joe Mazzulla. That athletic, big guy that can defend, somebody that can stretch the floor. You need to find that somebody, that fourth guy in that 4-5 rotation, because Al Horford is older, as we know. He's been playing great. Wasn't too great last night against Indy, but he's been playing really good basketball, right? We all know that Al is going to be there, and he's going to play his hardest, and he's going to chip in, but he's in his late 30s. Porzingis, we know he's already been injured. If you're just joining me, he's optimistic he'll be back on Friday night, but we know that Porzingis has the injury history. That's the biggest question about him. And you don't want to lean on Jason Tatum all year long to play 37, 38 minutes. So the Celtics, I think, have a near desperate need for somebody who can fill that 4/5 role behind Tatum, Horford, and Porzingis. The other thing I would like to see from this team, another position that I think needs to be figured out here, is a scorer off the bench. I'm talking about a natural scorer off the bench, somebody that can score at all three levels, because this bench scoring isn't good enough. So go out there. If you asked me, Nick, what are your two top tier positions that you need to fill with this team by the deadline? I'm going 4/5, and I'm going with somebody who can score off the bench, somebody that can score like that. And hopefully they can defend a little bit, but they need to score at all three levels. If you add those two pieces to this team, then this team has to win a championship if healthy. If not, then it's on those guys, because talent-wise and role-wise, you would have a complete team. Now, do not overlook vet minimum guys. Let's not forget that the Celtics were talking to Blake Griffin before the season. There was this idea that Griffin might come back in the middle of the year, later in the year. I would not be surprised if Griffin decides to come back and plays for the Celtics. Let's keep that in mind. Let's also keep in mind that the Celtics were looking at TJ Warren. Both those guys fill the roles that I just mentioned. Now, Warren has his own health issues, right? We know that. And Griffin is older. But if you're looking for somebody who can play the 4/5 on both ends of the floor, that can stretch it a little bit, he already knows the system. Blake Griffin would be a great fit. He'd be the perfect fit. TJ Warren is that scorer. He's a guy that can score at three levels, come off the bench and score for you. So maybe that's the route they take. But I would not be surprised if they make a trade, if not a couple of trades by the deadline. Stevens knows that he needs help, and this team needs a little bit more depth. No doubt about it. Let's jump into some of these comments here. Boston Swag asks, what about Jordan Walsh? Look, I think Walsh, he's going to be put in the corner for a little while. I don't think we should anticipate Walsh being a member of this team and playing any significant minutes until maybe a year or two down the road. He's getting his seasoning in Maine, and that's what he needs. I do think he could be an NBA rotation player. I absolutely believe that. My guy Jack jumps in. Come back to the Tidewater area. Love Virginia Beach. Love Norfolk. Love the 757. Absolutely love that area. Appreciate everybody who continues to support me to this day. All right. Now, why could this trade talk be happening? Why could this trade talk be happening right now? Why is this being thrown out there by Shams? He sounded pretty confident that the Celtics are going to look to add to this bench. Why is this talk happening now? My thoughts about that in a minute. Don't forget to give us that thumbs up, give us a like, throw in a comment, and subscribe to the channel if you're not subscribed yet on YouTube. I do the Nick Cattle Show during the week every Monday through Friday at 11 a.m. live on YouTube Eastern Time. Catch you guys tomorrow morning with that. And then we do Cattle's On Causeway as well, focusing on the Celtics. Like, comment, subscribe. All right, so why is this talk happening now? Well, the trade deadline is on February 8th, so that's about 2 months away, right? So you got 2 months to put the pieces together and make the move that you think you should make, if not moves. So you've got about 2 months before you've got to pull the trigger here if you're trying to make a trade. So that gives you a few weeks to put the feelers out there and figure out who's available, who you might be willing to give up, what kind of picks you're trying to give up. Those conversations are happening right now. And so that's why you do it. With about 2 months left before the deadline, you can put all the ducks in a row. Get word out early. You get that word out early, you can possibly outmaneuver some of the other buyers. The Celtics are trying to win a championship, right? What you want to do is, if you want to add to this team, you want to get out there before anybody else gets out there to try to acquire the piece or pieces that you believe that you need that makes this a true championship team. So try to outmaneuver. Give yourself some time to evaluate the current team. But if you know that this team is not deep enough, if you think this team is not good enough, if you're Brad Stevens, then you put the word out there right now. You get on the phone and you start having these conversations so you can get ahead of some other contenders. You want to get ahead of the Miamis. You want to get ahead of the Philadelphias. You want to get ahead of the Milwaukees. And you also look at the result of Kristaps Porzingis and his injury. And the injury to KP highlights, I think, the depth issues, especially at the 4/5. When you're looking at the 4/5, Porzingis goes down, you're looking around and you see how much that impacts your offense and it impacts your depth. And so I think the Kristaps Porzingis injury, if the eyes weren't already open for the Celtics, helped open their eyes to the idea of, yeah, we're going to need more. We have a lot here, but we're going to need some more. Here's Chris Forsberg from NBC Sports Boston this week on the starters playing together. Boston had its starting five intact for 8 of its first 10 games this season. That group piled up 133 minutes together in that stretch while outscoring opponents by 112 points over that span. In the last 10 games, Boston starters have played just 58 minutes together in 3 total appearances. The Celtics are 10-1 overall when their preferred starting five is on the court. The only loss coming in the first Philadelphia meeting. Ipso facto, when the starting five is playing, when they're together, they've been excellent. But the Celtics have not been able to keep those 5 starters on the floor consistently. Derek White had the birth of his child. Drew Holiday banged up his ankle. And then you're dealing with KP's injury. They have not been able to keep that 5 on the floor enough over the past 10 to 11 games. And so that's when you start to see the domino effect. That's when you have to lean on your bench more, and then you realize your bench isn't good enough. In the last 10 games, the Celtics are 7-3, if you're wondering. What also could cause this talk of trades and trade deadline conversations is the level of play. And again, back to Chris Forsberg, NBC Sports Boston. He wrote, the Celtics ranked 4th in the NBA in turnover percentage through the first 12 games. They ranked 26th in the NBA ever since. That's crazy. They're 26th in the NBA in turnover percentage since the first 12 games they played. First 12 games, didn't turn the basketball over that much. They were 4th in turnover percentage. All of a sudden, after the first 12 games, they fell apart. The turnovers started to pick up and pick up and pick up. Forsberg writes, but what really makes that number sting is how poor the Celtics have been at generating turnovers of their own. Despite all their defensive talent, the Celtics rank 28th in the NBA in opponent turnover percentage. So they're turning the basketball over a ton. They're not creating turnovers from the opposition. That's kind of a nightmare combination. So what I did, I went into the lab because I appreciate Chris Forsberg. I appreciate his numbers, but I wanted to go into the lab and I wanted to look at my own numbers. We can sit there and talk about how the Celtics are turning the basketball over, but I wanted to know why that was. I wanted to know who was turning the ball over. Let's start with Jason Tatum. Did you know that right now, Jason Tatum's turnover percentage is the worst of his career? He has the worst turnover percentage of his NBA career this season. 13.1%. The worst prior to this season was 10.9. So Tatum has the worst turnover percentage of his career. Now, if you think that's bad, think about this. Not only does Tatum have the worst turnover percentage of his NBA career so far this season, he has the lowest usage that he has had in 4 years. So if you think about usage, which means, how much the guy has the basketball in his hands, Tatum has had the basketball in his hands the least amount over the last 4 years this year, but his turnover percentage is as high as it's ever been. So he doesn't have the basketball as much, but he's turning the basketball over more now than ever. That obviously is not great. It's also Tatum this year, his worst assist percentage of the last 4 years. So you start to combine all of these factors with Tatum, right? He's the guy you run a lot of offense through. He's not having the basketball in his hands as much, but yet he's turning it over more and he has less assists. Now, some of this is, hey, if I find you in the corner and you miss a wide open three, that's not on Tatum. That will impact his assist percentage. But it just gives you this general idea of what's going on. Tatum doesn't have the ball as much as he has in the last few years, but he's turning it over more. And he's not finding those assists as much as he has. That's a problem. How about Jaylen Brown? Because I know when I bring up assists, all of you out there are thinking Jaylen Brown. Jaylen Brown actually has his lowest usage of the last 4 years. So both Brown and Tatum have their lowest usage number of the last 4 years. But Jaylen Brown, unlike Tatum, who's turned the basketball over, Jaylen actually has his lowest turnover percentage of the last 5 years. So unlike Tatum, Brown has had the basketball less in his hands, and he's actually turned the basketball over less. Meanwhile, Tatum has it less, turns it over more. So the turnovers are killing this team. And I want to highlight something. It's not just the turnovers. It's when the turnovers happen. On Twitter/X, Boston Sports Info posted the following. This is the fourth quarter assist to turnover numbers, okay? Tatum and Brown combined. Tatum and Brown combined in the fourth quarter of games this year. 21 assists, 25 turnovers. Your two best players have more turnovers than assists combined in the fourth quarter. That's a nightmare. That is a nightmare, especially for Tatum, who has taken steps as a playmaker. So your two best players have more turnovers than assists in the fourth quarter. How about the rest of the team? This is going to blow you away. So 25 turnovers, 21 assists for Tatum and Brown in the fourth quarter. The rest of the team, 94 assists and 37 turnovers. The rest of the team has done a fantastic job taking care of the basketball in the fourth quarter. 94 dimes, 37 turnovers. But your two best players have 21 assists and 25 turnovers. That's inexcusable. It can't happen. Tatum and Brown have to be much better taking care of the basketball. Period. End of sentence. Here's another part of some of the struggles, I think. Drew Holiday is still trying to figure out how he fits. And I think the Celtics are trying to figure out how Holiday fits. We go back to that usage number. Holiday has the lowest usage of his career. And when I talk about the lowest, it's not even close. If you want to go look up Drew Holiday's stats at Pro Basketball Reference, and you can pull up the advanced statistics, look at the usage percentage for Holiday and go down his career numbers. It's the lowest usage of his career. It has plummeted compared to how much Holiday would run the offense and have the basketball in his hands in Milwaukee. That has fallen off a cliff here in Boston. And you get it because they're trying to run offense through Tatum. Brown's got to get his touches. Porzingis has to get his touches. But when you look at the usage, Holiday is not used to playing off of the ball as much as he's played off the ball here in Boston. And I think that's making him a bit clunky. And I think because he has the ball less, he's been sporadic with taking care of the basketball. Lowest usage of his career, but Holiday has the highest turnover percentage since 2016, 2017. So when you look at Holiday's numbers, his usage percentage has plummeted. his turnover rate has skyrocketed. Again, these are the numbers that you need to figure out and balance. And so I think Holiday is still trying to figure out where he is with this team and what he's supposed to be doing, and he's still trying to get used to being off the ball. They're not running as much action with Holiday having the basketball. So he's still trying to figure that out. His assist percentage has also fallen off a cliff. So lowest usage of his career, highest turnover percentage since 2016-2017, and his assist percentage has cratered. Now I wonder, here are the questions that I'm led to ask after looking at these numbers. Would it make sense for the Celtics to allow Jrue Holiday to have the basketball more in his hands? And I know, you got to keep Tatum happy. You've got to keep Tatum happy. You've got to keep your stars happy. But when you look at these numbers, Tatum's turnover percentage is up. Holiday's turnover percentage is up. Assist percentage for both guys down. Holiday way down. Usage for Holiday way down. Can Joe Mazzulla try to figure out a way to balance out some of the usage on this team? Can he get Jrue into the action more? Can they get Tatum down in the post more? Do they have to initiate as much offense through Tatum and Brown as they do? Again, it's a dangerous game because you've got to keep your stars happy, and I understand that. But when you look at these numbers, I don't think you're getting the best version of Holiday, and you're not getting the best version of Jason Tatum. So maybe you give a little bit more to Holiday. You put a little more on his plate, and you up his usage, and you drop Tatum's usage just a little bit more. You could still run offense through him, but post him up more. Get Tatum off the ball more. We talked about Tatum on the podcast yesterday, the Nick Cattle Show pod. We talked about Tatum and his pull-up three. His pull-up three percentage is like 30%, and he keeps jacking up pull-up threes. It's because he has the basketball in his hands. It's because he's initiating the offense. So maybe the answer to help some of this is to get Holiday the ball more in the fourth quarter and have Tatum work off of the ball and post Tatum and have Tatum have the catch and shoot 3 attempts. And maybe that'll get Tatum going a little bit. So maybe you have to change your approach in the fourth quarter as far as how you're running your offense and who is the spear, who's the tip of the spear when you're running these actions. I would try to get Holiday the ball more. I would have him run more sets, which is another problem, by the way. A lot of times when they have Tatum with the basketball, they don't run sets. They just kind of play. So, do you give Holiday more usage and take a little bit more off the plate of Tatum and Brown? Maybe that'll help you with your turnover issues once Holiday gets his usage up and starts to understand where he's at. How about running more offense through Kristaps Porzingis? I think that would be a good idea. Set him in the post, put him at the nail, run through KP at times, especially in the fourth quarter. Defensively, the issues, look, they're allowing penetration. Their on-ball defense hasn't been as good the last couple of weeks. They got to figure out pick and roll coverages. They're not staying attached to shooters, especially against Indiana. And they're also allowing transition to happen because they're turning the basketball over constantly. So they have to defend better on the perimeter, which there's no excuse with Holiday and White. They have to be better on ball. They can't allow these straight line drives over and over and over again into the paint for either a finish at the bucket or a kick out for a three. They have to do better against penetration. They've got to stay attached to the shooters, and they can't turn over the basketball because that results in easy buckets. Tom Campbell jumps in. They're on the floor more in the fourth quarter than the rest of the team, plus they are trying to make plays. Yeah, that's fine. I understand they're on the floor more, and I understand they're trying to make plays. But, Tom, you can't turn the ball over. No matter how much they're on the floor, no matter how hard they're trying to create some plays, 21 assists, 25 turnovers from your two best players in the fourth quarter, when we're talking about two of the top 20 players in the league, when we're talking about Jason Tatum being an MVP candidate, We're talking about guys that have been in the league 6-7 years. You can't have more turnovers than assists in the fourth quarter. You have to button that up. All right, that'll do it. Wrap things up on this Wednesday night. Appreciate everybody joining me. AJ, I saw you. Amy, I saw you. Couldn't get to your comments. Maybe next time. But I'll be back tomorrow morning, 11 a.m. The Nick Cattle Show podcast is live on YouTube right here. Again, Nick Cattle Show, Monday through Friday, 11 a.m. Cattle's On Causeway comes your way on Wednesday nights at 7 p.m. non-game nights. Then game nights, we will do a live post-game podcast immediately following the game on Wednesday night. Like, comment, and subscribe. Everybody, enjoy your Wednesday night.